This week on LTC News, a look back at some of our favorite segments of 2017.
Marshmallows was where we started, and now we make a ton of different types of candy from scratch.
There's a freedom to it, and I think an affirmation to it, to art, to being able to participate in art.
It's almost like the herring here, and our rivers are like the canary for the ocean.
I'm counting fish.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. There have been so many great stories this year that deserve a second look. The LTC News staff pulled out some of their favorites. We'll start with a sweet story from February. If you're a downtown resident, you might know about some of the delicious treats made by Lowell candy maker Lydia Blanchard. We visited the kitchen of Sweet Lydia's to learn how it all started and where Lydia is going next.
We are going to make some marshmallows. So this is our sugars and water, and when this is fully boiled and syrup-like, we'll pour it over our water gelatin mixture and get to whipping. So this will make about 12 bags of marshmallows. I started making candy and baking at home kind of after work as a fun stress relief hobby, and I ended up shipping a bunch of products to various friends and family in order to not have them all in my home.
Lydia was encouraged by those friends and family to sell her confections.
Kind of took off. Marshmallows was where we started, and now we make a ton of different types of candy from scratch. And these guys we cut into 1-inch squares before dipping in chocolate and topping with sea salt.
She learned the business of small batch manufacturing when she rented space from Brewed Awakenings on Market Street downtown.
For the first couple years, I rented space from Andy at Brewed. It was a great way to share business resources and knowledge about where to get ingredients and labels and, every aspect that you could think about starting a business. It was wonderful to have that sort of mentorship and partnership. We have all of our nice little caramels.
To keep up with the demand for sweets, Lydia needed her own retail space. She found the Sweet Spot on Merrimack Street in downtown Lowell, just moments away from her home.
The big thing was wanting to stay kind of close to home, knowing that I knew this community, and any commute time would be taken out of sleep and time with family instead of work time, and it's worked out really, really well. This is our finished marshmallow product. So we'll spread this in a sheet pan, and then it sets for about 24 hours before we cut it. So this is almost closer to fluff texture-wise, but this will set and firm up a little bit into our soft, pillowy marshmallow. I really appreciate products that are made from scratch by hand in small batches. I think that there's definitely a way for us to grow with some larger equipment that might expedite things or help us make things in larger batches.
Although Sweet Lydia's has created some Valentine's Day specialties like spicy caramels or strawberry champagne truffles, she has this to say about making your selections.
Anything that we make here is made with so much love that you could buy any of our products for Valentine's Day.
Sweet Lydia's Confections, locally made, with love, right here in Lowell.
In a well-worn room in the basement of Lowell High School, we found art blooming. Through a grant from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, new immigrant students were paired with established art students to work together on self-portraits in cloth. It was the 4th year that artist-in-residence, Margot Stage, worked with the students.
If you look carefully, this is something that she came up with all by herself. the eyelashes, which I think is just, and see how she's doing it? She's shredding the fabric to make the lashes. I'm really impressed. We're working with two classes, one class of art students and one class that's called the newcomers class, and those are more recently arrived immigrant students, many of whom speak very little English. And we pair an art student with a newcomer student, so they work together. They have a partner, and they work together. So it's a sort of multicultural experience for each of the students as well. It's a project funded by the Massachusetts Cultural Council, where I, as a professional artist, come into the school and do a residency and work with the kids. And we're working specifically with fabric and fiber. Yeah. So these are the prior years. This young lady at the top here, she's an incredible artist. She spent hours kind of shredding fabric to get her hair loose like that and kind of create a third dimension to it, you know. This is one of my favorites too, because it's such an unusual use of a patterned fabric as the face.
So on my project, I put a palm tree as my face background because of where I'm from. There's palm tree everywhere, and I'm from Vietnam. Oh yeah.
They can be as creative as they want to be. We're trying to get a portrait out of it, but you know, if they want to do something totally different than that, within the gist of a portrait, there's one of them around here that's like totally abstracted. Like this young lady, she was very, very shy, and she did not want to show her face, so she put a big flower over her face, and that's okay with me. This was a very sad student. I mean, I think he had lost a brother, and he also was from the Middle East, and so he made his face as a broken heart, and that, to me, was a perfect expression of self and of what he's going through.
I've been going through a rough patch mentally lately, so I decided to make it seem like me by creating a very sharp contrast and a mix of colors that aren't necessarily always good to look at, and like just rough edges and just contrasting colors.
I want to hold this up for you because the thing that struck me is look at the mouth. I asked him whether he knew that would really look like teeth, and he said he did, but I was amazed. There's a freedom to it, and I think an affirmation to it, to art, to being able to participate in art. We have a whole box of zippers, and some people have used them as mouths. Some people have used them as eyes. I think the thing about the project that I love is that it translates so easily across languages because we all have a face, we all have eyes and nose and mouth and hair and ears, and that's obvious. So even if you don't speak any English, you get the gist of what's going on, and kids have been able to create their faces with a lot of success, in my opinion. It's very exciting for me as an artist.
In April, we visited the Luna Theater at Mill No. 5 for some jazz. Jazz music is an American art form with many subgenres, from Dixieland to bebop to jazz fusion of the 70s. On Thursday nights, there's live jazz on the Luna Theater stage.
Luna Sessions is first and foremost a live jazz night.
Our music is rooted in jazz tradition, and specifically the Jazz Messengers, which was a group that Art Blakey led for many years. About half the time is a special guest.
Tonight we have a vibraphone player.
We always have an open session on after the first set, and people are welcome to come and bring their instruments and play.
You know, it's part of the lineage, if you will. Jam sessions have been happening going back to the early 1900s. That's how most people learn how to play. jam sessions is every Thursday night starting at 8 o'clock. The band usually plays shortly thereafter. It is free, all ages.
It's a really great space to play in. And it's different from a bar because you don't have that kind of cacophony in the background.
One of the best aspects of this night is the people that come out and are interested, just simply interested.
You know, the music we're playing is pretty friendly to somebody who's just walking in. I think instrumental music in general, not just jazz, has lost some ground because people's listening attention spans are changing.
If anything, jazz is just kind of brewing in the unlikelier places.
Myself personally, but also us as a group, are trying to do something that brings it on a level of accessibility without, you know, giving up anything. You know, we're trying in our little neck of the woods up here to do something that's fun and we're very serious about what we're doing. We're not just kind of up here knocking around.
In May, we joined Jane Calvin of the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust on the banks of the Concord River for a report on their research project that counts fish with volunteer observers and a video camera in the river.
I'm counting fish. I'm volunteering for the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, who's doing a fish monitoring program here at Centennial Island Fish Ladder. So I come out here most weekdays and look at the top of the fish ladder to see if any fish come by for a 10-minute slot, basically, within a 3-hour window. So I'm not a mathematician, but the sampling of the data will show how much fish are able to get up the fish ladder.
We're here standing on the southern end of Centennial Island, and to my left is a canal, and to my right is both the fish ladder but also the main stem river. This is the Suwasco watershed, the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord River watershed. At this location, there's a fish ladder because of the dam. The dam is a hydroelectric dam. We work with both state and federal agencies and our volunteers to help them understand what's happening with the fish passage in the river. And what we're looking for is to document the return of herring. Herring are known as alewife as well. So it's a very important fish for the economy, for nutrition, but also for forage fish. It's a forage fish out at sea. It's almost like the herring here, and our rivers are like the canary for the ocean. We are also seeing fish in a underwater camera that we have. So we are documenting passage that way. This is a pilot year. We've never had a formal counting program here. So what we're really trying to document is, okay, what's going up the main stem of the Merrimack and what's going into the Concord? And the big picture of what we're looking at, besides sort of being the canary, is that we're also trying to expand passage into the entire Suwasco watershed. And if we're able to do that, that would be opening up the largest acreage of riparian habitat in all of New England. So that's kind of exciting.
I couldn't think of a better spot to spend, 10 minutes during my lunch hour to come out here and count fish. People think I'm crazy when I tell them I'm counting fish. And they may be right, because I have yet to see a fish. So I'm sort of counting rapids, but 0 is a good number, right? Right, Jane?
The volunteers have been fantastic because they really understand that 0 is a great number and 0 is an important number. And really this is almost more like establishing a baseline for next year and the years after that. I think it's frustrating for them though, because they see these huge numbers in Lawrence and they'd love to see some numbers here. And we'll get there. Well, I mean, even a 1% of that would be awesome.
In July, a powerful art exhibition opened at the New England Quilt Museum on Shattuck Street, downtown. Threads of Resistance was all about protesting the political landscape of the current presidential administration, and the show's organizers were inundated with entry applications from around the world.
Sitting quietly along the cobblestones at the corner of Middle and Shattuck Streets is an absolute hidden gem.
The New England Quilt Museum plays a very important role in the cultural vitality not only of Lowell itself, but of the entire New England region.
The New England Quilt Museum is a fiber art destination, and along with a permanent collection that includes antique and historical quilts, the museum has a variety of exhibits running throughout the year.
We're proud to be an institution that not only exhibits and educates, but also preserves that art.
Earlier this year, a small group of artists called the Artist Circle Alliance had the idea to channel some of the frustrations they were feeling about the new presidential administration into an exhibit of protest quilts.
And then we decided that, we couldn't have been the only ones thinking and feeling the way we were. So we decided to put the call out as a general call to the public to see if we could get some additional interest from other art quilters out there to see if they wanted to participate in putting together an exhibit about the current White House administration and policies that we were struggling with.
They didn't know yet where they were going to hold the exhibit, but they sent out the call for art.
And I think it was maybe 30 minutes later, I got an email from Pam Weeks.
I went, we have to have this show. I spoke to Nora. I said, I can take out an exhibit that's scheduled. May I contact Sue? And she said, yes, go for it.
We were thrilled. We jumped right on it and said, please premiere it here. We'd love to have it open.
They received over 550 submissions from across the country and around the world.
It was a clear indication to us that we were not alone in the way that we were feeling about what was happening in the country.
What was striking to me about the submissions from all over the world were how important the United States is and this presidency has become as an international topic.
When we first went out with the call, we got, I got a lot of angry emails from people saying that the subject of politics doesn't belong in quilts, and quilts are supposed to be warm and fuzzy, and there's no place for this sort of thing in the quilting world. And that's fine, they're entitled to their opinion, but we were pretty quick to point out that there's a long-standing history of politics in quilts.
Protest or social commentary has been used in quilt making by women with very little other way to express their opinions for almost 200 years.
Off to the side, there's a special room to show the few quilts that have been deemed inappropriate for children.
And my hope is that no matter what side you're on and what your political stances are, that you can at least appreciate the artistry and the mastery of techniques that have been used in creating these quilts.
We're very glad to be in downtown Lowell, to have such a diverse community. We think our exhibitions reflect that diversity, and we continue to welcome and invite everybody to come and learn a little bit more about quilt art and quilting in general. I think people are always surprised when they come in.
As Mayor Kennedy said, Lowell has become a welcoming mosaic of diverse cultures. This is certainly apparent on JFK Plaza, where a new monument was unveiled on September 24th. Sobin Pin of the Khmer Post was there and brought us this report.
It's been a wonderful journey.
After months of anticipation, a new monument was unveiled at City Hall. City Councilor Rodney Elliott presided over the ceremony.
We dedicate this monument to serve as a reminder to the world that we will never forget the travesties endured, yet the perseverance to overcome the crimes of humanity on the Cambodian people.
City Manager Kevin Murphy explained that the recently completed landscaping in JFK Plaza was done to create an area befitting a beautiful monument.
So with that in mind, we decided for this monument and all future monuments that we would construct 2 new islands on JFK Plaza. so that there would be appropriate spots to place these beautiful statues and monuments.
Artist Yeri Levan, who created the monument called Khmer Refugee, is a National Endowment for the Arts Fellow and one of just a few Cambodian traditional ceramists living today.
Like to translate in English, just brief a little bit. He very proud of Cambodian community. He very proud. He say thankful to all the community who have donated little penny, $10, $20, anywhere private donation. And this is not just for our generation right now. It is for the next generation whenever we are not here anymore.
After a blessing by the monk, the national anthem, the Cambodian national anthem, and a performance by the encore dance troupe. Finally, the unveiling. The second annual Lowell Kinetic Sculpture Race was held on September 23rd on a gorgeous fall day. Kinetic sculptures are all-terrain, human-powered art sculptures engineered to race over the road, water, mud, and sand. The city was packed with spectators of all ages watching the intrepid racers. Tom Golden kicked off the race with the ceremonial oath.
We have an oath to take. And when faced! And when faced! With potentially perilous problems! I will remember the one rule to rule them all!
Then the racers were off, heading to the Songus Arena to tackle the maddening mud pit. The racers continued on to Lowell Heritage State Park for their next challenge, the Merrimack River Water Obstacle. After the soaking, the racers headed back to the finish line on Market Street, where they had begun the race about 4 hours before. Football concussions were in the news quite a bit in 2017. We went out to the football fields at Cawley Stadium to speak with Lowell High athletic trainer Damon Amato. He explained what concussions are, how they are working to avoid them, and the protocol for dealing with them when they occur.
Concussion is a traumatic brain injury that happens from a blunt force trauma, and it, in layman's terms, kind of wiggles your brain around inside your skull and causes damage. The trauma from a concussion typically results in displaced neurological connections and also potentially bleeding on the brain, and that bleeding can cause swelling, which will cause impairment of certain neurological connections that cause different symptoms. The most common symptom for concussion is a headache. Almost everybody gets a headache typically from a concussion. Other than that, other common symptoms are dizziness, ringing in the ears, nausea, things like that. In total, throughout the year, I do see a lot of exposures because we have all the sports at Lowell High School. So I'd say I see between 25 and 40 concussions a year. We have a head injury policy passed through the school committee. The protocol is full rest, cognitively and physically. The biggest question I always get is how long am I out for? And unfortunately, that's the one question I can't answer because we don't know how long the symptoms of that concussion will last. Once their symptoms are completely gone for 24 hours, then we start the return to play protocol. And that starts with some mild physical activity, and we really try to increase their blood pressure to see if any of that activity brings those symptoms back. So if we can reproduce those symptoms, then we have to stop what we're doing there, and that's kind of our baseline to know that we can't progress them yet. See how he would get his head through, and his shoulder pad would be on the inside of where he's going. So that was the old way. A safe hit would be leading with your shoulder pad and not your head, with your eyes up front so that you can see where you're trying to tackle and getting on the near hip of your opponent. So if parents ask me whether football is safe, I tell them it's an individual decision. A lot has to do with how physical and how mature their athletes are, and how well they can take collision sport. Some kids who may not be as physically mature as others will have weaker neck strength especially, and that can predispose them to getting a concussion. Or they may just be a lot smaller in stature than other players on the team, and when those two forces collide, obviously the bigger one wins. I don't typically see kids who worry about the risk very much for football. They love the game, and if they choose to play, then that's not really a deterrent for them. I personally feel that in the future we might see a little bit less tackle football, a little bit more flag football, especially for early on, and maybe tackle football will happen at the high school level only eventually, but that's, it's impossible to tell if that's going to happen.
Thanks for joining us for this look back at the year of 2017. Everyone here at LTC News wishes you a happy new year. We'd love to hear from you about suggestions for news stories or your thoughts on our show. Write to LTCN@ltc.org. I'm Alanna Flood. We'll see you next time.